Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost here again. For those of you who have been following us for the past 51 or 52 weeks, this is the TRU Friday Community Gathering. We've been trying to make the best of a bad situation, which is what we found ourselves in last March. We originally were thinking about giving up, like so many of us, and crawling into bed and not coming out until this was all over. Originally, we thought it was going to be over in 8 weeks, that it was Memorial Day, that it was June, that it was September. So basically, it's at some point we all, I think, made the wise choice to just accept where we are and to use the resources that we have and to make the best of this world that we have right now. And I'm very impressed with how many people who come to our community gatherings are active and creative during this period. Kudos to all of you. Today we're going to talk about, we've tried not to be New York centric. We live in a virtual world, so being New York centric is sort of foolish right now. So we're consciously trying to bring in conversations about what's going on outside of the New York area, which also seems a little silly to all of you in the room because about half of you are from outside of the New York area anyway. So we're going to come back to something we've been doing on and off for the past year, which is regional theater, what simply called the regional perspective, what's going on outside of New York and how is COVID affecting theater around the country. I have a terrific lineup of speakers today. I'm so pleased and so proud to have them with us today. Gretchen Shugart and Carl Sylvestre and R.K. Greene are here representing a company called Theater Forward. I'm going to have them tell you more about what that is, but just know that they are generally very supportive of regional theaters around the country. They'll be specific about that. And we have two people from Long Wharf, and we have Tom Parrish from Trinity, and we have Kit Ingui and Betty Monz from Long Wharf. So I'm going to invite everybody to introduce themselves now, and I'm going to let's start with you, Gretchen, because you are really who I started with. You were the first person I talked to about doing this panel today. Actually, RK was the first person, but I'm going to move to you because ladies first.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Thank you all. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm always excited to talk about Theater Forward and its mission and the theaters that we support. So, Bob, I don't know if you want me to launch into a description of Theater Forward and what its mission is, but I'm happy to do that.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that briefly now, and we'll come back and fill in more. I just want people to have a broad overview of how active and how essential you've become.
Sure. So Theater Forward is a nonprofit that's based in the land of the Lenape, also known as Manhattan, New York. And it's a 40-year-old organization that was founded by 10 very important regional theaters, two of them who've joined us today, who wanted to have a connect through this organization and have a direct connection to New York City and the funders that are based in New York. So it's been around a long time, and the mission is really to provide resources to those regional theaters that they can do their very important work.
And you have a list of some of them up on the on your background.
Yes, so there are 19 theaters listed. Maybe you can read them. You can go to our website, theaterforward.org, for more information. But 10 of those are founding theaters, and then over time, we've invited 9 other theaters to join the network. And each theater is located in a different city, spanning coast to coast across the nation. So they don't compete with each other.
Oh, so you actually have it set up so that no two cities are in the same area in your company.
That's right. There are 3 member theaters in California, and there are 2 in Texas. They're both big states, and the cities are far away from each other. So, yeah.
I didn't realize that. That's interesting. do you want to let's meet Carl Sylvestre also from Theater Forward, and then and also we'll meet R.K. Greene in a moment. Carl, hello, how are you?
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here. I'm Carl Sylvestre, and I am the Director of Development at Theater Forward.
And what does a Director of Development do?
Well, essentially, we try to look for any possibilities to support the regional theaters. A great deal of our supporters are from the corporate community, but we've expanded to include a lot of funders from foundations and from individuals. So it's really looking at any opportunities to do partnerships and look for funders to support programs at our 19 member theaters.
And are you actually limited to 19? Or are you open to being available for other theater companies if they say help, if they come to you and say help?
Well, we do partnerships, a little bit of partnership, but our priorities are actually those membership theaters.
Okay. RK, tell us about your involvement with Theater Forward. Unmute yourself.
Sure. I'm off mute now. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. So I'm on the board of Theater Forward and been on for 5 years coming up now. I think so. I am there because of my work with Citibank, and we have been a long 20+ year supporter of TRU because it gives our employees throughout the country membership benefits to go and get a discount at any of the 19 regional theaters that are there. Some of the activities of Theater Forward are actually having a gala to raise money and provide grants and other support for all these 19 regional theaters. Especially during this pandemic, when theaters have been struggling just to keep, the lights on, Theater Forward has been helping that by providing subsistence funding, grants to be able to continue some of their programs. And one of the theater companies is the Seattle Rep. And I just got a postcard from them. And just to give you an indication of the some of the need in some of the regional theaters is that they're on a program called Give Big, which of course is important, but they're looking at raising $12.5 million just to open their doors for the new season starting in 2020, late 2021, early 2022. So everybody's been working very hard to try to keep the theater alive, as is Theater Forward.
Before I move to the specific to the Trinity Rep and to there goes my voice again, and to Long Wharf, I want to ask a few questions to Gretchen and Carl and RK about their experience. First of all, how did you start Theater Forward, Gretchen? Where did the idea come from, and how have things changed since COVID?
Well, it was founded over 40 years ago. So it was started by the theaters. And this was, there was an era of golden age of sort of regional theaters really kind of developing. And in the 70s, in 1977, a number of them sort of decided to form the group. So I didn't show up until, boy, I have great timing. I showed up unofficially in March of last year to assume the position of executive director, and my official first day was April 1st. So Carl and Liv, who's on this call, and I sat around the table, our staff sat around the table and said, are we canceling our gala, which was supposed to be, I think, March 31st? Or not. And then the market pretty much made up its mind for us. Our COVID-19 did, and everything shut down. So I have been in this position really only during a time when theater was shut down. And, as Carl said, it has been, we have been laser focused on trying to provide resources to the member theaters And the first thing we did was raise $1 million of sort of extraordinary COVID relief funding from the Hearst Foundations to divvy up among the theaters. And then we have continued with our normal fundraising over time, but trying to increase those amounts to be able to help the theaters. Just as everybody on this in this call knows, it's a very difficult time.
Now you did transfer to a virtual benefit. You wound up doing your fundraiser.
We did a virtual benefit. We skipped last year, and then this year when was that, Carl? Seems like eons ago, but I guess it was in.
It was actually February
8th.
February 8th.
February 8th, we had a virtual benefit. Yeah. And so, which was what I would view as a successful event, and raised not insubstantial amount of money, which we were proud to distribute to the theaters.
Did you make your projections on it?
We almost did. We came very, very close. Very close. And as you know, like the operating costs or the production costs were less than they would have been with a live event. So we were pretty happy with the results.
Yeah, for us, taking into account the fact that our expenses were so much less than they normally would have been, we made what we normally make we actually netted what we normally net in a benefit. So a lot of people have had that experience, which goes back to what I was saying earlier. I mean, we've all dreaded being where we are right now, but if you embrace it and if you use it well and consciously, you can still keep going and keep being, well, you can keep succeeding to whatever degree. I'm going to talk to Kit, Tom, and Betty a little bit about that in a second, but I want to just go to Carl and RK and Gretchen and ask you who figured out how to do your fundraiser virtually, and what was the experience like for you?
Carl, you want to answer that?
Well, I would. It's like, woo. Well, actually, it really was a collective effort. I think we quickly realized when we knew we had a benefits in the spring. Actually, one of the first decisions that we made was to move it up earlier. Because we thought that if we waited in the spring, that people are if we do a virtual benefit, that in the spring people are going to be tired of being home. And so the idea was that we actually decided to do the event in February rather than April, because we really wanted we knew people would be home. The decision, it was a collective decision with the board, who decided that there were two train of thoughts, and one being, well, should we just make a request for contribution, or should we actually go and actually produce a virtual event? And the decision was to do so. And it was successful, as Gretchen mentioned, in the sense that there were opportunities that the virtual environment allowed us to do. One being that we were able to, in a very succinct way, tell our story. And by taping everyone who normally will be in so many different places, but able to actually be part of one community one night. So the virtual environment allowed us to actually produce a production that captured the geographic span of our theaters.
And I'd just like to make sure we credit our producer, who is named Ken Savage. And Ken, we had the benefit of having all these member theaters. So we reached out to them, and he was recommended to us. He's a guy who has produced lots of theater, both in the live environment, but also virtually. So he understood and assembled a great production team. And, it wasn't just done on Zoom by us. We brought in professionals to really help us.
Yeah, the important thing that we try to stress with everybody is the importance of having a very good tech person. And at the size of the event that you're doing, you probably needed more than one tech person. But we had a whole team of tech people for our benefit, and anybody that's trying to do anything worthwhile in this medium needs to rely heavily and trust their tech people. There are things that you can do that
I'll add is that we were able to then highlight some of our regional theaters with presentations and various material and things that they were working on, and also have some internationally known talent that helped MC and appear in the gala itself. So in that way, it was quite seamless and quite successful.
Well, congratulations on that. There's another part of today's discussion that we're going to get to later, but we're going to talk about the importance of diversity and inclusion, and how it really has become obviously more important than ever, and how we're all taking steps to make sure that we are being conscious, at least. So we're going to talk about that. But first I want to meet, well, let's start with Long Wharf. Kit and Betty, tell us a little bit about yourselves and about Long Wharf.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am Kit Ingui. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the managing director of Long Wharf Theatre, which is located in New Haven, the lands of the Quinnipiac, Wappinger, and Hammonasset people, and Paugussett. There's a lot of tribes up here, and we owe them a lot. And I'd love Betty to introduce herself.
Betty?
Hi, yes, sure. I'm Betty Monz, and I'm the Director of Philanthropic Engagement at Long Wharf Theatre. And I work very closely with Kit and our team at the theater, and very closely with Gretchen and Carl and the whole gang at Theater Forward. So it's an honor to be here and happy to talk through the excitement and challenges of surviving as a theater in COVID, and just humbled to be in a room with so many really cool and outstanding artists, theater artists. It makes me wish to be back. The last time I think I was that way was about a year ago, or a year and a half ago almost, when we we canceled our production of The Chinese Lady as we were going into tech, and we had just closed our third show of our season, which was I Am My Own Wife. So it just is.
Betty, I just want to tell you, your mic is a little soft.
Oh.
So.
Is that better?
Oh, that's so much better. Oh.
Okay, I apologize. Anyway, it's humbling to be in the room with all of the wonderful artists that we've met today. And again, the last time that we did that was when we canceled our show. We were in tech for The Chinese Lady, and we had just closed our show, I Am My Own Wife, which was a fabulous production, and I just miss you all. So
Thank you. That's so sweet. That's so kind. Let's talk about a little bit about Long Wharf. For those who don't know much about your history, I mean, how long have you been around, and do you have a mission or a vision or a?
Sure.
Why do you produce what you produce?
So Long Wharf Theatre, we've been around for about 56 years now. At this point, we were one of the earlier regional theaters and one of the founding theaters of Theater Forward. And Long Wharf Theatre's mission is actually evolving right now, I will say. But we produce theater to inspire. We produce theater to provoke. But what we are really digging into is inclusion, partnership, and innovation. So those are our three pillars: artistic innovation, radical inclusion, and meaningful partnerships, kaleidoscopic partnerships.
Okay, well.
Go ahead, Betty. I see you.
Betty, was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, I mean, we were known for a very long time for innovating and producing new works, developing new works and new artists. We've been around for quite some time. We've undergone tremendous transformation, probably in the last 5 or 6 years, and to the point where we've hired a new artistic director, and Kit became our new managing director in, I guess, the fall of 2019, and we were, handling a lot of challenges when COVID hit. So we've all kind of gone into this journey in unprecedented times and uncharted waters. So
we're kind of an unusual organization because we actually love to get managing directors because we are a company that really supports understanding the business of theater. I mean, we love artistic directors too, but managing directors and producers and people that really are in the weeds of the business are the people that we like to have as models for people in our.
Yeah,
in
it
our,
was a joy to hear so many people talk about their producing credits and that that's their work. It's very
Yeah.
exciting to be in a room with so many producers.
Yeah, that's and I'm a playwright and who had an idea like 28 years ago, and this is what it is now. So, how has COVID interrupted or helped or changed the path that Long Wharf was already on?
Well, and the main changes that change for everyone is that we can't gather audiences together in a theater, right? But our focus coming into 2020, the fiscal year 2020, so our 2019 and 20 season was really on becoming a theater that was centering these three pillars. We were in process of becoming a more just organization, of really becoming an anti-racist theater, and learning with each other what that means. So our work was expanding. We were really trying to center the voices of BIPOC artists, ensuring that the communities we brought to work at our theater were diverse. That was our direction. So going into COVID blasted our ability to offer our community our artistic director's inaugural season. So our artistic director, Jacob Padron, he had created his inaugural season, which was a beautiful, powerful reflection of our community and the kaleidoscopic nature of it. And so what we did is shift, as everyone did, to a more virtual platform, as you all have done very well. And we called our season One City, Many Stages. And our intention was to really embrace our city and be all over it. And our hope was to do many outdoor gatherings. We knew we couldn't be in our space, so we wanted to be all over. The restrictions of Connecticut prevented that. And so we ended up primarily living online, really centering conversations. We opened our season with a congress that was about putting art and activism next to each other, and what does that look like to create a new American theater that centers activism and social justice.
Mary Miko is complimenting on you on your 2019-20 season. She says that it was some fantastic work and choices that you made.
Thank you.
I'm gonna bring Tom in right now. Tell us about Trinity Repertory, your history, and again, it's the same question. It's basically how has for some people and some companies, COVID became an unexpected gift of sorts, because it forced a lot of people to actually stop moving as fast as they were moving, just sit down and evaluate where they were and what they could do and what they couldn't do and what they should do and what they shouldn't do. So were there any gifts for you from COVID, or was it just a scramble to try to keep going?
Well, it's absolutely been a gift and a challenge at the same time. But first, I'm Tom Parrish. I'm the executive director of Trinity Repertory Company in Providence, Rhode Island, land of the Narragansett people. I use he, him, his pronouns. And so Trinity Rep has been around since 1964. And so it's our 57th season, 57th season being all virtual, of course. And our mission is to reinvent the public square. And sort of like Long Wharf, we focus on art and activism and building community. Our core values are company, community, and education. We have one of the last long-standing resident acting companies in the United States. So we're very committed to resident artists and creating work of by and for the community. And so when the pandemic began and we had to cancel our in-person season, we quickly pivoted to digital programming, and we have a page on our website called The Show Goes On, where we have all of our digital programming is there and archived, and you can view clips from past productions at Trinity Rep, as well as a weekly talk show series that we launched called Your Half Hour Call with Kurt, who's our artistic director, Kurt Columbus. And we resurrected some radio plays that we had produced, and then when we got into the fall, we produced a digital production of A Christmas Carol, and it was quite a fantastic experience, our first major foray into filmmaking, but we had almost 200,000 viewers from 36 countries on 6 continents. So it was an incredible experience to produce that. But as you said, Bob, it's been an opportunity to really pause and slow down rather than try to find a way to produce in-person work. We made a commitment early on in September to use this year as a planning year. You know, it's often so hard to change these institutions. You know, like when the plane's in the air, it's really hard to change. And we've been fortunate that the plane's been on the tarmac for 12 months. And so we can really take it apart and put it back together in a better and more equitable way. And so we chartered an anti-racism transformation committee, and we've been re-examining our whole organization, from how we produce theater, how we staff the theater, how we pay people, how we engage with artists, how we engage with our community, how we fulfill our mission. And we're putting together that plan now. Also looking at our physical space, going through facilities planning for how we can renovate the space and really sort of crack it open and make it more of a community center for Providence, where people from all different backgrounds feel at home and included and welcomed in our building, both creating art, but having community conversations. We really want to be that sort of catalyst for building community in Providence.
Thank you. I just want to point out to the room that we do welcome conversation and interaction. So if you have any comments or questions, if you go into the bottom navigation bar, next to closed caption and breakout rooms, and before more, you see something called reactions, depending on what kind of device you're on. It may be somewhere else on your device, but there is a thing called reactions, and if you open it up, you can actually do a virtual hand raise. I'm going to take hand raises in a few minutes, but I first want to complete some.
I just wanted to interject about Trinity Rep, and Tom, you could maybe talk a little bit more about that. Your structure is a bit different than some of the other regional theaters, in that you have an ensemble, team of actors, that you have, and in partnership with, I guess it's Brown University. Is that right?
Yeah. So there, you bring up two sort of unique features of Trinity Rep, one being the resident acting company. So we were founded with a resident acting company, and it's changed and morphed over the years, but we have 16 actors who are the primary artists of our ensemble in our work. We do work with some guest artists, but I often say, many theaters choose the company for the season, and we choose the season for the company. And so that's a big driver of our work. And then you also brought up Brown University. We have a partnership with Brown University on the Brown Trinity MFA programs in acting and directing. And that's a program that's about 14 years old now. And it's a tuition, we provide free tuition for our students, and it's a 3-year MFA program. And it's grown incredibly over the years, and our graduates are doing amazing things in the American theater.
I want to ask a question of both companies that I know a lot of people in the room are going to want to ask, because they're writers. How do you find the works that you produce, and is there a submission process? I'm asking it because I know it's going to get asked.
We don't have an explicit submission process, but we do have a wonderful community partnership and artistic coordinator. And in her role, she is facilitating, actually getting scripts that are not just things we've reached out to agents for, but are submissions. So they're building a submission program right now. So we'll hopefully have updates on our website soon, but at the moment it's, you can email info@longwharf.org, or we can try to put you in touch with Cheyenne.
You made a lot of people in the room very happy. Tom, how about Trinity?
Well, we have a pretty active commissioning program. So we have a lot of plays in our pipeline that we've commissioned. Generally speaking, we don't accept unsolicited scripts just because of the limited staff bandwidth to review them all and read them and respond to them all. So I think most of our plays are in many ways often sourced from our acting company, and they're, what is exciting to them and what they're interested in doing. And then all of our work, of course, is focused on our mission of reinventing the public square and looking at how we can, advance anti-racism in our community and create an equitable theater company for Rhode Island.
Gretchen and Carl and RK, you have a broader perspective because you're dealing with 19 companies around the country. So, based on your experiences, is everybody on board and doing what they should be doing in terms of creating greater opportunities for diversity and inclusion?
Absolutely, it's incredible how focused all of the organizations are that we represent. And we actually have a program, a grants program at Theater Forward. The money was put up primarily by Bank of America. It's called our Bank of America Activate Awards. The theaters can apply for funding to help pay for some of the costs of becoming more equitable and inclusive. And they're in various stages of kind of self-examining and having conversations and working with consultants to really understand where the systemic racism is or how it's manifesting internally, and trying to kind of dismantle that with a view of also being able to go out into their community and dismantle racism. So we're proud of the programs we're running and the funding that we're able to bring to the table for that, and really excited about that work, because I think all of these organizations are going to be much, much stronger as they address this kind of internal issues.
We're all in a week where we want to be hopeful and happy about the fact that we finally have a court case where somebody is being made accountable for killing a black man. I mean, it's about time, and it's great. But I think doesn't it? I think you would all agree that it's so much deeper than just one policeman or even a bunch of policemen. It's more than policemen. It's just a whole cultural affliction that we need to address, and we need to find a way of digging ourselves out of. And I don't think it's going to be a fast process. I think it's going to take a while. Carl, what is your take on where we are as a country right now, based on the verdict that was put out this week?
Well, it's weird. This week, while we were waiting for the verdict, we had conversations with some of the recipients of the grants that we awarded, and what's very clear, what's becoming very clearer, is the fact that it's not one thing that's going to change anything. It's a process. And I think if anything, the fact that we were on pause all last year, that there's a period of reflection, but it's what's coming out at the end of the tunnel. It's about the fact that the dialogues are different, and so it's clearly it's not going to be one grant program that's going to change everything at all quickly. It's the idea that dialogues are beginning, changes are being made, but what we realize, it's a long game. It's not something that's going to change. but at least the start is the dialogue, and that we are talking about it in a different way.
What I think is important about theater is that it is an opportunity to show other stories on stage and educate people. I think that the problem with our country is that people just don't. They just are ignorant of the other. They're ignorant and afraid of the other. And I think,
let me interject. There was a couple of years ago, Theater Forward helped, and this is in Minneapolis, the Guthrie Theater, with a program to invite and create new work from the indigenous people who had not really been invited into this cultural icon in Minneapolis. I mean, Carl or Gretchen, could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, actually, it was exactly that, and it's a program that I had the chance to actually see in person, where and one of the outcomes, it was like bringing in a group of indigenous theater makers to the Guthrie over a period of, it was about 4 weeks, to write a new piece. And one of the outcomes of that, there were many different outcomes, but one of the significant ones was about the working practices of when you invite a whole new community to the structure of the theater as it was, and that there are different ways of approaching cultures that they don't work the same way. Or the new play is not developed in the same manner that the Guthrie basically says, oh, we have rehearsal, it starts here, and there's a set schedule. But rather, by inviting a whole new community, they had to change the producing practice in terms of like when are rehearsals called, and how writers are asked to deliver something on the page. So it is part of that process, the fact that by including new voices, theaters have now to be willing to welcome them in a very authentic way, rather than saying, you're going to do things my way, but rather there are new ways of working.
The other reason why theaters are so crucial, in my humble opinion, is that you are the means of reaching out to the communities. It's within our own theater world. I'm sure there is work to be done, but I think there's a lot of awareness. But at least as theater makers, we can reach out to audiences and reach out to communities and get those. We are a means of having those conversations for people the conversations that need to be had. If you agree or don't agree, I mean, if you disagree with me, you can.
I would love to kind of reflect on something that Carl said and lift it up and kind of how it relates to what you are lifting up, which is that we make theater in one particular way, right? There's this like historic way of making theater in white America. And as we really work to become a more inclusive producing organizations, as we work to, we have to change. We have to produce in different ways, and that's that takes a lot of unlearning and letting go and messing up, stepping in it and asking a lot of questions and doing a lot of listening and a lot of sitting back. And like supporting and offering resources and listening.
The word that jumped out at me was unlearning. That probably is the hardest part, is the unlearning, because there's so much that we're conditioned to, and there's so much that we're used to thinking and seeing things a certain way. We don't even know that we think about it and see it that way.
Exactly. And so if we are going to actually be the pathway to our communities, if we want our community to mean something different than just the few thousand people who have been attending, as subscribers, or the 40,000 who've, bought a ticket for a show in 1 year, if we want that to look different, we have to do that work. We have to be willing to listen and change and just lift our stake out of the ground and change.
Thank you. We do have hand raises, so people are finding their way to the hand raise. We might come back to some of this. I think we should, but I want to give people a chance to make their comments or questions. Paul, would you like to say something?
Yes, along the lines of what Tom Parrish was saying about the Trinity Rep and the public square, to me, in my experience, the Trinity Rep is not a theater. It's a cross between a temple of civilization and the barricades for social change. When I used to go there, everything I've learned about theater, I learned at the Trinity Rep, because they use their space. On Wednesday nights, they would have New England style town hall meetings on issues of the day on a Wednesday night. Then on a Friday night, in the very same space, they would open a play. It would be like a Peer Gynt or an Enrico IV. And it showed me you can put ideas on stage, and that was the purpose of theater. Everything that I've learned, that I've used in writing, I guess my last 36 plays, I learned at the Trinity Rep. What I just had to say that. No questions. This is a wonderful space.
Okay, I think he likes you, Tom. I think he likes you.
I said, thanks, Paul. I didn't even pay him for that, so that's good.
Alex, yeah, there we are.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Here, I'll turn my video. So Theater Forward, just looking through your list of theaters that you represent, one of them is just very near and dear to my heart. But I also know that at least one of these theaters has an endowment that's worth more than $100 million. And when you're raising money for these theaters, knowing that some of these theaters have this huge, massive endowment, what's the conversation like? Because I know that the endowment exists to build the interest and use that to fund your theater, but it's also a fund for a rainy day, right?
So Gretchen, you didn't know the questions were going to get this tough.
No, this is the rainiest day in the history of the world, and I know at least one of these theaters has a very generous endowment. And what's the conversation like with some of these theaters that have those resources when we're talking about inclusion, when we're talking about bringing more people into the fold?
Alex, let her answer.
Sorry.
No, I think it is an excellent question, and there's not a sort of clean cut and dried answer to that question. I would say when we have raised money, for example, the emergency COVID relief fund, we scaled the amounts that were distributed to the theaters on the basis of their size and budgets. So, we take into account sort of all of that, but, and we direct money also based on the programs that they're running. So our equity, diversity, and inclusion funding is not going across the board to everybody equally. It depends, they have to apply for it. Mm-hmm. And we have a panel of expert judges, independent of Theater Forward, who decide who gets that funding. But you're right, some of the theaters have more money than others. And, they all need money.
Well, Sammy's making a good point, which is a lot of the theater endowments aren't a blank check; they are specifically allocated to specific things, and so sometimes a theater may need your help for other projects.
Yes, I understand, but there's this is when all the small theaters are dying, all the little ones can't survive right now.
Well. You're absolutely right. Nobody can argue with that point. We're looking for other ways of supporting and helping the small theaters. People are conscious of that here in New York. I know that there are movements that are trying to help keep the small theaters alive. In fact, there's some city and state programs that are being created right now, or have been created and are opening up for these theaters. I'm with you there.
Thank you for answering my question. I really appreciate it.
I would just add that it's really, for all theaters and especially regional theaters, it's become very expensive to make theater, and subscription, the subscription model is no longer what it once was. Mm-hmm. So it's become harder to maintain to remain sustainable. And I think we're all having to think about within this opportunity, this pause, how we can better partner with theaters to be more efficient in what we offer, how we can be more connected to our communities. I mean, just we have to change and transform. So if we think we're going to come out of this the same way we went into it, I think we're wrong, and we're not using this moment the way we need to. So we are doing a lot of that kind of work. Yeah.
And especially with, government support having been gone away over so many years, a lot of the theaters have turned to educational areas to be able to, bring in additional support and also reach out to the community through their educational programs.
Yeah, some of these endowments are 25 years old now, and that new program isn't being created for any new theaters. It's rough. It's hard out there.
Agreed. I need to move on because my panelists have to leave at 6, and I want other people to have a chance to ask questions. Neil Rubenstein.
Yeah, I found this is very fascinating. This is for Gretchen, Carl, and RK. It's a loaded question. Would you or have you considered also allowing producers to reach out to you to help get their shows, get their project out to these theaters?
Neil, but basically the mission of Theater Forward was laid out earlier. These are specifically 19 theaters that they help.
Yeah, and some of those theaters I'd like to be into. I recognize some of them. Matter of fact, Long Wharf, I grew up.
I think he wants to know if you'd make a match.
Yeah, there you go.
Between his commercial show and one of your theaters.
And it so happens my commercial show was written quite a few years ago, and it's multicultural in terms of casting. We were way ahead of the curve on that one.
Okay.
Well, the short answer is we don't pretend to be theater producers ourselves or to know. We know what we like, but we're not going to judge what's a good script, what's a producible script. We leave the business of producing theater to the theaters. That's their job. We are just looking for resources, both financial and introductions and learning opportunities and things like that to provide to the theaters.
Thanks. Okay, we're going to move to Sammy. Sammy Saltzman, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, I would. I wanted to pick back up on something that Carl had mentioned and then Kit had sort of expanded on, the idea that the way we produce theater is inherently uninclusive and needing to unlearn things that we do. And I wondered if any of you on the panel could speak to some specific issues that you're using to help address that. Specifically, are any of you dealing with, the abolishment of the 10 out of 12s that people are talking about, expanding childcare for people that work in theater, or pay transparency for better pay equity? Like, are there any actual proposals that you're seeing within the regional theater market that would help with some of those equity issues?
Anybody want to jump in?
Great question. We're actually, everything you just listed is on our list of things we are either in process, have already implemented, or are figuring out how to implement it properly. So if I imagine most of us are aware of the We See You White American Theater demands that came out over the summer, those have become a working document at our organization. We are using it to change how we change how we produce. We are using it to inform our staff culture and to really look at every aspect of the organization and see, we've been given this gift by a number of brilliant people. Can we now take it? Instead of sitting there and saying, we don't know what to do to become more inclusive, we now have this beautiful document that gives us the information on steps we can take and now actually making them happen. So yes. I love the question, and I'm really happy to work at a place that is able to answer it affirmatively.
You said there was a document. Is there a way for us to find our way to that document?
Oh yes, I'll put the link in the chat.
Oh good, thank you.
And at Trinity Rep, we're doing the same thing. I've used the phrase that right now we're building Trinity Rep 2.0, and looking at how to produce theater in a more equitable and inclusive and anti-racist way. And so, yes, eliminating the 10 out of 12s, we're not overlapping productions, more rehearsal time, transparent pay, all of that. We're adding an EDI staff position that's going to help, move all of our EDI and anti-racism work forward. That's equity, diversity, and inclusion. Sorry.
I'm just going to applaud Tom because looking at everything from a fundraising perspective, we're fundraising to our values, and I think they've done, Trinity Rep in particular is really done a fabulous job doing just that, and I admire some of the decisions they've made. This is a sort of transformational time, and we need people to understand that the fundraising has to align with our values, and that sometimes is great and sometimes it's challenging.
Gretchen, I know that your focus is on the 19 companies. Do you have your finger at all on the pulse of the regional theaters, or are you really focused on your 19 companies?
Well, I think they're reflective of the greater market. They're all LORT, they're all members of LORT, and but their missions may be slightly different. But I think that if you're talking specifically about EDI, that everybody knows they need to do that work.
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is how consistent has been the response around the country? Are there areas of the country that have been a little bit more resistant or less? Not resistant. They wouldn't call it resistant. Less understanding of what is expected of them.
The makeup of the different markets can be very different, right? And the makeup of the board of directors tends to be predominantly white and male. And in some of the markets, yes,
okay.
But I think, again, that theaters are very focused on this to varying degrees, and some, as Kit said, like Trinity Rep, are farther out there than others who are, evolving slowly. And you have to look to the leadership of the organizations for that change, and the board, the governance, and is the board dialed into this?
So the board is key. I've been trying to get Teresa Eyring on one of these Fridays to talk about a real broad view of the regionals, because she's the theater communications group, and she has some idea of what's going on with everyone. I'm just wondering if the response is slower in some places than others, whether people are finally really on board and doing what they need to be doing and are really conscious at this point and aware of what they're not aware of.
Well, I think, as Carl said, we have a long ways to go. All of us, even those that are the farthest out and the most aware, are learning every day, hopefully.
Yeah, there is not a manual per se to say that how to do the work. And again, every community, some progress is actually relative for some theaters, and where you could say that they've done something that you wouldn't think like 2-3 years ago they would have, in terms of casting or the people that are brought to the table, whereas other theaters were more further along in the process, realizing that we just beginning. So it's hard to make a blanket statement other than that every theater, just that there are steps that some organizations, those steps are huge, some are small, and it's hard to equate them, because in some communities what may look like a big step, in others it's really a small step.
Right. Yeah, it's hard not to be hopeful when things have happened this week that have happened, but we also have to remember it doesn't really justify all of the horrible things that have been going on prior to this one smart decision that was made. I'm not going to go into my frustrations. Stephanie Schwartz, do you have something you'd like to ask? Take yourself off mute. I'll move to Joanne. Okay. Oh, there you are.
My question really is for Carl. You raised my curiosity when you were talking about having invited the people from the indigenous community, and you said you had to learn new ways of making theater that fit their needs or their experience or expectations. I wonder if you could just give a couple of specific examples.
Well, actually, I was referring to that as an observer, not necessarily because that happened at the Guthrie, and I, at Theatre Forward, is a funder of that program. I was there to observe that, and so essentially, so it wasn't from my own personal experience. However, I mean, a quick example that I can point to has to do with. Essentially, I think something Kit alluded to in terms of the rehearsal hours and how when people will actually come into the space and when they felt they were ready. Another quick example, again, it's as an observer, had to do with actually audiences in a sense of the theater had to make allowance that going to the theater is a family event. So that means it's not only, you bring the kids and then they had to, if you really had to be inclusive, you had to figure out a way to accommodate to the fact that during the performance, there will be the grandparents who are taking care of the grandchildren and they want to be in the same space. And so that's just a general observation, and I thought the Guthrie did a very excellent job in terms of accommodating the fact that there were different needs that traditional audiences wouldn't have to deal with.
There's another issue that I've dealt with here was basically that we're very inured and very used to a certain voice in works, that when things are submitted to us, they're read and judged based on how well they conform to our certain expectations that everybody has about what a play is supposed to be. And what we're beginning to learn is that other cultures, or even within our own culture, there are different voices that express themselves in different ways. And we have to train ourselves not to jump to conclusions about a work because it doesn't fit our assumptions. It doesn't fit into that mold. And we have to open up and let other voices submit and be heard and be accepted. I think that's also part of what this process is about, is making room for more voices than the ones that we're used to. Do you have any, Tom, do you have any experience with that as somebody who probably reads lots of plays?
Yeah, I mean, we read hundreds of plays every year, but sort of to like the community voices comment that's come up. I mean, we do a good amount of work where we work with community members who write their own plays, and we put them together into evenings. We have a program called America 2 that, pre-pandemic, we would focus on some social issue in the community, and community members would come and they would write short plays, and then we would perform them, like a series of them. And it was inspired out of the Every 28 Hours program after the shootings in Ferguson a couple of years ago. And that sort of launched us on these sort of social topic specific gatherings, and then facilitated dialogue that comes out of those plays.
May I hold you for like 2 more minutes so that Joanne can ask her question? Or do you have to, if you have to leave, you just let me know. Okay. Joanne, what did you want to ask?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I was hoping that you would be able to address within the framework of diversity and inclusion, accessibility and then how each theater, possibly accessibility in captioning, sign language, audio description for, how does that come into play within the scope of each of your theaters and Theater Forward?
I can go first, I guess. So
Okay.
access is a big part of our programming. And it's led by our incredible Director of Education and Accessibility, Jordan Butterfield. And we do open captioning for three performances for every production that we do. We have a sensory friendly series for folks on the spectrum. We do a lot of programs for folks on the spectrum in general. And then assistive listening, ASL interpretation. So yes, very active accessibility program. Thanks.
Yeah.
Not as far advanced on this topic. I'd say it's been a huge focus of our organization this season is how do we prepare to be an accessible theater if that's what we say we are. If we're theater for everyone, we have to be accessible. So we've had open captioning, one performance, a show for the past 2 years. We offer assisted listening devices, but this is an area that Long Wharf is definitely working to improve.
Great.
Well, thank you.
And for Theater Forward, I would say our, we're not producers. We produced a gala and that had open captioning, but it is something that we look at in our member theaters. And again, everybody's focused on it and we care very much about it. It's not a free proposition. It costs money, and all of these organizations are trying to keep ticket prices down and raise more institutional money from foundations and donors. But it takes time to sort of figure out how to get there from an economic standpoint.
Well, my company, Signmation, what I'm trying to start, and along the lines of what, like a model like Trinity Rep is doing, is to have all the theaters to put a line in their budget, whether it gets filled or not. And for each production, that there's a line in the budget. And I was hoping, Tom, if you could elaborate, like, how do you address this? Because I also assist, and I'm a grant writer. Where is a portion of your funding come from? Endowment, corporate?
Well, when we started open captioning, initially it was supported by TDF, Theater Development Funds. They have a great program. And then once that program transitioned, we ended up buying our own open captioning equipment and bringing the service in-house because it was much less expensive for us to deliver the service. So when we started open captioning, we started with 1 performance per production, and then we expanded it to 3. And I think next year we're expanding it to 5 because once we have the script loaded into the captioning software, it's the marginal cost of doing an extra service is so small, but we do have a budget allocated for accessibility programming for each of our productions that we produce.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome. Okay, everybody, I'm gonna let you guys go now. I'm gonna thank you all. Thank you, Gretchen and Carl and RK for bringing in 2 of your companies from Theater Forward. I appreciate it very much. I'd like to have more conversations like this. So if you want to invite other theater companies to come in, I won't say no. I won't stop you.
Thanks, all.
So
thank you.
Kit and Betty, Long Wharf has long been on my radar. I have great respect for your company. Tom, Trinity Rep, I've known for years and years and years. I'm very, very honored to have your companies represented in this room today. I hope that my community has enjoyed the conversation, and not only enjoyed it, but hopefully been made to think about things. Hopefully, I think we're all pretty willing to make the changes that need to be made, as long as somebody's guiding us and helping us to avoid the mistakes that many of us will make while trying.
It's called being human. Mistakes are going to be made.
Yeah. We're all doing our best. Thank you, Catherine. So just so you know, everybody, we do this for free. But we ask that if you're not a member of TRU, we ask you to make a donation. And if Joe Nelms is here in the room, or if Jay's here, somebody's going to put our donation link in there so that you can donate to us so that we can keep going. I want to also thank the community, thank all of you, and thank all of the people that come here every week. You've really been incredibly supportive, and we're absolutely, the pandemic has not hindered us at all. We're financially solvent, and it's just crazy and impossible, but it's only possible because you guys are making it happen. So keep supporting us.